and let's go back to sort of the beginning. So a couple things I want to do with you guys today is go through the Tic Tac Toe as I've got it up to this point, and I'm going to give you guys a couple of sort of extension tasks to work on to turn in next week. It won't be too rough. But I basically got it fully working, and it wasn't rocket science to do it. And then I want to talk a little bit about what work you guys were able to do. Well, we'll talk about that with the Tic Tac Toe, but also you guys looked at some of the other different templates and kind of poked around a little bit to see what other possibilities you have. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. I'm sensing not a whole lot of we. You guys are less we than a Nintendo store. All right, well, anyway. For sort of more training wheels off kind of project work. And then the last thing that, if we've got a little bit of time, did anybody, I know Alex said he did anybody play with the foliage tool when we were doing the hour of code stuff? No? Okay. Well, Alex did, and it's pretty cool. So if we've got some time, we'll either do that today or maybe next time. Show us a little bit about the foliage tool and how you can add flowers and stuff to your terrain without too much trouble. You sort of paint it. Okay, so let me show you the game. Right? So this is what happens when you hit the game. Now, two things I did. One is I basically turned off any of the score business, so this won't actually update because it's not really relevant to Tic Tac Toe, although what I'm going to have you guys do is basically modify that to be like basically say whose turn it is, player one or player two. Okay, so what was in the base template before you did anything? Yeah.
There was something about like it was like a separate variable like highlighted. There's a set target and like some round off kind of.
Yeah, this business. Okay, and so what was that for?
It was for changing the material of the blocks.
Yeah, so if the material is, if you have your mouse hovering over a thing, it changes the material to white, and when you unhover, it changes it back to blue, but only if the block has not already been clicked yet. Okay, so each block here has a variable assigned to it, is active. It starts as false for all of them, which is active is a bad name for it. Really, maybe we should call it has been clicked. Okay, and it starts false for all of them. Okay, the second I click on one, then when I highlight it or mouse over it, it won't change to the other material. Okay, and then if I click on something, what happened in the base template before I changed anything? Yeah, it turned yellow and it stayed yellow. And it would update the score when you clicked on something, although it turned that part off, right? Okay, so what do we want it to do for Tic Tac Toe? When I click on something. Yeah, okay, so great. Tick. Now what? So if I click on another thing, what should happen this time? Oh, it should be a different color. Okay, and I want it to alternate colors. Okay, and then I put in a thing to check if it won and then do a reset, but we'll talk about that as we get through it. Okay, so I need to alternate colors because I need to alternate whose turn it is. Okay, so I made a variable called turn, and I put that in the game mode. Okay, now why would I maybe put it in the game mode as opposed to, okay, so there are really only three actors, by the way, that we're dealing with. The game mode, the block grid, and the blocks. Okay, so what does the block grid do? The block grid actor, this guy here. Okay, all it does is it's got the scoring stuff and it spawns all the different tiles. Well, better late than never. we'll save the flogging for after class. The flogging for being late. Do you know what a flogging is? Well, you're going to find out, my child. Okay, so on begin play, what does it do? It creates the grid of 9 different tiles. Okay, good? Now, there is a variable here, size. If I set this to 4, it would have made 16. Okay, it would have done a 4x4 grid. Okay, great. Now, I didn't change that because it's Tic Tac Toe, and it's supposed to be 3 of them. If I wanted to be really evil, I'd make you guys do a Connect 4 game. That'd be fun. Yeah, a lot more variables, plus gravity. Okay, so anyway, most of this stuff, here's a bunch of math, and all it's going to do is it's going to spawn 9 different blocks and then put them all in their appropriate positions. Okay, so that it makes a 3x3 grid. Okay, that part I really didn't change much about. Okay, with one thing I did add. Okay, so the blocks, the individual blocks, have a whole bunch of variables inside, and one of them that I added was block ID. Okay, why do I think maybe I should have done that? Okay, to have each block have a different number attached to it. Yeah, that's, and keeping track of who won and so on, okay? So what I did was I assigned, so let me go back over here. So this for loop, right? Now we had loops when we did make code, right? And if I want to create 9 blocks, what I really would like to do is say to create a block 9 times, okay? And so that's code for a for loop, right? So starting at 0, ending at 8, okay, why 8? Because 0 through 8 is how many things? 9 things, and there should be 9 blocks, right? Okay, so we start with item 0, and this index right here is going to be the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 8. So the way I chose to number my blocks was 0 through 8. Okay, so the first block that gets generated is block 0, then 1, then 2, and so on, and then I have a total of 9 of them, 0 through 8. Okay, is that good? Oui? No. Okay, so that's pretty much the only thing I changed here, was to attach this block ID to each block. Okay, and then if I go into the individual blocks, you see I added this block ID variable, and I made it exposable on spawn and instance editable so that each one could have a different value. Okay. Now, they also had the isActive and highlighted variables. Okay. And the isActive really just means, how'd you clicked it yet? It starts false, and if you click it, it's set to true. Okay, we'll see why that was important later. And then there's this other variable for the highlighted, which basically takes into account the, do you have the mouse over it or not? Okay, which handled the clicky stuff and the material change when you highlighted it. Okay, okay, good. Now, what should happen when I click on a block? Should change color, but which color does it change to? Yeah, it depends on whose turn it is, right? So, we go back to the beginning here. All right, so this part was the same, handle block being clicked. Okay, so if you're clicked or touched or controller clicked, the reason that there's 3 different ones there is because basically, are you using a mouse? Are you using a like a touchpad, like on a screen, or are you using an Xbox-style controller? Okay, so since in theory we could be doing this on any device or deploying this to any device, we need to have sort of all the possibilities taken into account. In our case, the only one that's actually triggering is the click one because I'm using a mouse. Okay, so I click it. Is the active variable true or false? If it's true, that means I've already clicked on the block before. And what should I do if I've already clicked on it? Nothing. And so that's why there's nothing coming out of the true here. Okay, if it's false, that means I have not yet clicked it. And what should happen then? I should change color and so on. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, you just got clicked on set that you had just been clicked on so that you can't keep clicking. Okay, and then we need to change color and so on. Okay, good? All right, now how do we change the material for an object? What block or what piece do we use there? We use one of these things, set material. Okay, I've got two of them there. Why do I have two of them? Yeah, in some cases I want to change it to the orange color, which is really more yellow. Wake up. You're going to get a double flogging. Huh? Why don't you look up what a flogging is while you're at it? Okay. Because one player changes the tiles to the yellow or orange, whatever, and then the other one the red. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I need to show you how I made the red material, just so that we're clear on that. Okay, so let me back up a second. So I created a variable called player turn that is inside the game mode. Okay, I have to put the variable somewhere. I chose to put it in the game mode. Right now, which blueprint am I editing? I'm editing an individual block blueprint. Is that the same as the game mode? Of course not. Okay, so how do I access variables from one blueprint if I'm inside another? Okay, so I am inside the block, the individual tiles blueprint. I want to access a variable that's in the game mode, which is a whole other object. How do I get them? I have to cast to the object, right, to access variables from somewhere else. Okay, so in this case, because it's a game mode, I need to cast to the puzzle game mode. And which puzzle game mode? Well, the one that's the current game mode. Okay, so really the casting is, and I really wish they had made this, I wish that they had made this one block just for cleanliness, but whatever, that's what they did. Okay, so what game mode are we? Pipe that into the puzzle game mode, cast to that, and that allows me to access player turn, which is a variable inside the game mode. Okay, good? Okay, why did I put the player turn in the game mode and not in the individual block? Yes, but also, do I need 9 individual copies of whose turn it is? Nope. I only need one of them. So the game mode is the logical place to put that because it's not a per tile thing. Okay, good? Now, in the case of the player's turn, how many different states are there for that? Like, whose turn could it be? One of two people, that's it, right? This isn't like a 4-player game or something. Okay, so what I did was I made the variable player turn a Boolean. Booleans can take on what values? Yes or no, false, true, 0, 1, however you want to say it. Okay, only 2 values. Okay, and that made sense for me to use for the player's turn because there can only be one of 2 values. Okay, so the way I'm thinking of this is player 1 is, make sure I've got this right. Player 1 is true and player 0 is false, or maybe it's the other way around. Okay, with the last class I actually had it backwards for a minute and then I had to switch it. But so I think, yeah, player 1 is true, 2 is false. Okay, but whatever, right? I just had to pick something. Yes? Okay, so get the current value of whose turn it is. And if it's true, then that's player 1, and if it's false, it's player 2. Okay? And then I go into a branch. This is an if-then construction, right? So, if the value is true, that means it's the first player's turn. If it's false, it's the second player's turn. So what do I do if it's the first player's turn? Yeah, change it to yellow. Otherwise, I change it to red. Okay? So that's why I got 2 of these guys here. I'm setting up a parallel pipeline, right? One for the first player case and the other for the second player case. Change the material to either yellow or red as appropriate. Okay? And then we got some other crap we got to think about. Okay, so let's think back to how we did this in MakeCode. Once I click it and I change its color, I also need to record which blocks are in what state so that I can tell whether or not somebody has won the game. Okay, how did we do that in MakeCode? You guys remember? Well, we had a bunch of if-thens to check the win part. Okay, so let's not talk about the checking the win part just yet. Let's talk about the data that we need to store that the check win function would need to use. Okay, so we'll get to the function itself in a minute. But how are we going to record which tiles are which state? Okay, true or false, but actually how many states are there for each tile that are possible? There's actually 3. Okay, why is it 3? Yeah, the original state, or player 1 has changed it, player 2 has changed it. Okay, so in MakeCode what we did was we said state 0 would mean unclicked, unselected. State 1 meant that player 1 had picked it, and state 2 meant that player 2 had picked it. Okay, that's just what we did when we did this with MakeCode. Okay, there's nothing special about the numbers 0, 1, and 2, but the logical choices. Okay, so I need to store for each block the value 0, 1, and 2. Where do I want to store that? There's 2 ways I could have done this. I could have stored a single variable for each block. Like I could call it block state, for example. Okay? The reason I chose not to do that is because then if I'm in the game mode and I need to check all the different 9 values, I have to cast to each of the 9 different blocks. Don't want to do that much casting. Nothing wrong with it, it's just going to mean untidy code. Okay? So I chose not to do that. What I decided to do instead was to make an array. Okay? Now, an array is a C++ object. Let me just sketch this on the board. Four, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, how many things are there in that array? 9 things. They're all 0, okay, to start with. Okay, now, how do I access an individual value? This guy, so let's call this array, what did I call it? Block vals. Okay, if I want to get this 0, it's block vals of something. What's the first entry? What should I number that one? So how should I number these 9 things? Okay, what would be the reasonable human way to do it? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is the first one, second one, third one. Wouldn't that be too easy? Okay, so here's how we index it. You always start with 0, okay, not 1. Okay, so if I want the very first entry, this guy is block vals of 0. And then the dude at the end is block vals of 8. He's the 9th dude, but he's block vals of 8. Okay, so arrays are 0 indexed is the way we say this. And why is it that way? Because that's how it is in C++, and what do you think Unreal Engine is built on? C++, okay? So just get used to it. Okay, so what I did was I created an array called block vals that's going to keep track of which blocks are in which state. Okay, let me go into where that variable is stored for a minute. I put it in the game mode. Okay, so I created a variable called block vals, and what kind of objects do I want to store in my array? I want to store numbers or integers. Okay, because what are the states that I'm allowing myself to use? 0, 1, and 2. Okay, those are all integers. Okay, so I made it an integer thing, and that gave it sort of that greenish color. But then I want to turn it into an array. Okay, and here's how you do that. So you see up here where it says variable type integer, and there's this little thingy next to it. If I click that thingy, it allows me to set it as a single integer, just a single number, an array of them, a set, or a map, okay? Don't worry about sets and maps. We just want an array, okay? So that means that now instead of being a single number, it's an array of different numbers, and I could have as many or as few things in that list or that array as I want, okay? Now, in this case, how many things do I want to have in that array? Okay, 9 indexed values 0 through 8, okay, because there are 9 blocks. Okay, and what should I make their starting values for all 9 of them? Okay, because when the game starts, none of the blocks have been clicked yet. Okay, and so they're all in state 0. And so each time I click on a block, I'll update the appropriate value in this array to either a 1 or a 2, depending on whose turn it was. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, now I put this block vals variable, I put it inside the game mode. I had to put it somewhere, and that seemed like a logical place to put it. Okay? All right, good. Now, arrays, by the way, can change size over the course of running your program. In our case, it never does. All we do is change the individual values inside the array. But you can make arrays longer or shorter as you go. We just don't need to here. Okay? All right, is that cool? All right, so let's go back to the individual blocks. Okay, so when you get clicked on, I need to set the array element to either a 1 or a 2, depending on who had just clicked it. Okay, this is why I made that block val variable, because if I just clicked on block number 0, which entry in the array do I want to update? Entry number 0. Okay, if I had just clicked on block number 7, which entry in the array do I want to update? Entry number 7. Okay, so you see how block ID is piped into index? Okay, index means which entry in the array. And by making it match the block ID, that made the math really easy. Right? Which block did I click on? Number 3? Okay, update entry number 3. It's always the same thing. Okay? All right, does that part make sense? All right, now why do I have that casting nonsense in front of it? So I've got 2 instances of the cast sort of in the left-hand part of the screen. Yeah?
Make sure it's not just the individual block, it goes to the game mode.
You're on the right track, but keep talking. Where is the array element, where is my block vals array stored? Where am I right now?
In the block.
And how do I get Holy crap. It's snowing.
April Fool's.
Yeah. No, it is actually snowing. Um, yeah, if I hadn't have been gone for the last week and my brain is discombobulated, I would have come up with some epic April Fool's pranks for you guys, but, huh? Yeah. Well, actually, you know, if I were President Feller, I would send out something and be like, the reading day tomorrow is canceled. You do, in fact, have class. That would have been a good one, right? You would have been pissed? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. Well, anyway. Yeah, so no good April Fool's jokes from me this year. Next year, though, you guys are doomed. All right, so the reason we had to cast to the puzzle game mode is because, or to the game mode, is because we are currently in blueprints for the block. We want to access and do things with variables that are in the game mode. That's not where I am. I got to cast to get there. Okay, and the reason I've got two of them there is because really think of what you see as two parallel cases, player 1 versus player 2. Okay, all right, and then I'm going to change the entry in my array. They all started at 0. What am I going to change the entries to? Either 1 or 2, depending on if it was player 1 that had clicked or player 2 that clicked. Right? And so now the array is going to have, after the game gets played, it's going to be a mix of 0s, 1s, and 2s. 1s are going to be in the spots where the first player chose, 2s in the second player, and 0s would be any spot that has as yet unchosen. Okay, so does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so that stored basically the who had been clicked and how. And then, well, after a player makes a move, it's now the other player's turn, right? So I need to change my player turn variable from whatever it is to the opposite of it. Okay, if it was true, then I need to switch it to false and vice versa. Okay, all right, so how do I do that? Well, first off, where is the player turn variable? In the game mode, so I've got to cast yet again. Okay, this part's getting a little redundant, or a little old, but all right. And so I'm going to read the value of player turn, and it's a Boolean. So how do I flop it to its opposite value? Not that thing. Okay, so logical not is logical negation. So true becomes false, false becomes true. Okay, if I had used numbers, I would have had to use math blocks there, for example, to multiply it by -1 or something. I don't know. Okay, good? All right, so I not it, and then I set it to the new value. Okay? All right, and then finally, once all the clickiness has happened, I need to check and see if somebody has won. Okay? Now, when would make sense to check if a player had won the game? Do I need to check it every 2 seconds? After somebody makes a move is the logical place to do it. Okay? I don't need to keep every 10 seconds. I only need to check it when somebody's moved. Okay, so I, in this case, chose to make a function inside the game mode called checkWin. And I need to trigger that function to happen. So I cast to the game mode, and then I tell the game mode thing, hey bro, run the checkWin function. And it will run the checkWin function, things will happen, and that's where we'll go next. Okay, so let's pause for a minute. Question, preguntas, and/or fragens. Okay, and don't worry, I am going to upload this project for you guys so you can access it and take a peek-ski. Yeah? Okay. Just kidding. No. April Fool, no. Okay, so Next, what we want to do is look at what the check-win function does. Okay? All right, we Gucci? All right. Let me close that, and let me go into the game mode. All right, so the check-win function, okay, so here's what's kind of cool. You can add variables over here on your component tab, right? But you can also add functions, and if you click add function, then it will let you make a new function. But what's neat is that functions get their own little tab, okay? So the construction script or the event graph has a whole bunch of code. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. But the check-win function is its own little palette of blank space. Okay, that's kind of nice because it means you can keep things tidy and have them, yeah, okay. So think of when you make a function, the stuff inside there is a def from MakeCode. Like def function, and then you specify what it is. That doesn't trigger it. You call that function somewhere else, and that triggers it. Okay, so we want to program in how to check if somebody had won the game. Okay, so check win, this is what starts everything, this sort of purple block, and then it's going to go into a bunch of code. All right, let me concentrate on how do I know if somebody has won along the first row? Yeah. All three are the same color. Okay, that's a graphical way. Think more numerically. Yeah, all three entries of the appropriate spots in my array are the same values. Okay? All right, so which values in my array correspond to the top three blocks? Entries number 0, 1, and 2. Right? Because how am I thinking of this? I'm thinking of it as 0, 1, 2. Those are my block numbers. Okay? So if I want to check the top row, I'm checking numbers 0, 1, and 2. If I want to check the next row, which ones am I looking at? 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay? So I have an array, and I want to pluck out individual values from that array. Which index values do I want to pluck out? 0, 1, and 2. These three blocks give me three individual numbers. Okay? What are the values that those numbers could be? They could be 0, 1, or 2 because 0 means player hasn't clicked it yet. 1 means player 1 clicked it, and 2 meant that player 2 clicked it. Okay. And I want to check if these are all the same value. Okay. So I have two double equals blocks. Okay. And what does a double equal block do? I pipe in two numbers, and what is it going to pipe out? A Boolean. Okay, a true or false. When will it pipe out a true? If the two numbers are the same. And when will it pipe out a false? And when they're not the same. Okay? So I'm checking, is the first number equal to the second number, true or false? Similarly, I'm checking, is the second number equal to the third number, true or false? Okay, and what do I want to have, what am I checking is whether or not all three of them are the same. That's why I go into an and. Okay, is the first equal to the second, true or false? Is the second equal to the third, true or false? Are both of those things true? Well, maybe, maybe not. Okay, so coming out of that and, the and thing is logic, right? Which means, what two inputs does an and gate get, or and thing get? They have to be Booleans, okay? And what thing comes out of an and? Also a Boolean. Okay, this is logic, right? So remember in MakeCode, these were all pointy dudes, right? Okay, logic, true, false. Okay, so The output of that AND block that's just above my mouse cursor will be true if all three entries for the row are the same. And it'll be false otherwise. Okay. Now, how do I know that somebody's won? Along the top row.
All of them are true.
If this is true,
Yes, but you mean all of them are true.
are the same,
Yeah.
except,
Plus it's the zero.
yeah, okay, none of them can be 0, because if all three are 0, that doesn't mean anybody has won yet. It just means we haven't played. Okay, those blocks haven't been picked. Okay, so I need to rule out the case. I only care if they're both all 1s or all 2s. Okay, and so I have up there, just above my mouse cursor, what kind of block do you think that is? Exclamation equals. It's not equals where you shout. What do you think the exclamation point means? Good thought, but no. Partly because okay, what kind of output would come out of a factorial function? A number.
Yeah.
What kind of output comes out of this not equal block? Oh, damn it, I just said it. Shit.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a not equal block. Okay, so this is the same as an equal block, except it's not that, it's the opposite. So if the two numbers are equal, it will output false. If the two numbers are different, it will output true. Okay, so it's flip-flopped. Okay, because I want to make sure that the number is not 0, because that means nobody's played yet. I only care about 1 or 2. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and then I want all of them to be the same, and none of them are 0, and that's why I have an AND block there. Okay, Gucci? Okay, now, if this is true, that means that a genuine win has happened along the first row. What should happen if the win occurs? Game over, I should tell the players that they won, I should reset the game, all of that stuff. Okay, so that's what'll be to the right here, so let me scroll over there. Okay, so if somebody won, set the winner to either 1 or 2, depending on who won, and then we'll do a bunch of crap. Okay, what about if nobody won along the first row? Well, how many other ways are there to win? How many total ways are there to win? Careful. Keep thinking. Use your damn head. 11? Where the hell did you get 11? There are 8 different ways to win. Where'd you get 11?
I did all across and then all down.
That's 6.
No, I went this way and this way.
That's 8.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to send you back to kindergarten?
I multiplied the 3 across by the 3 down.
Oh, instead of adding.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's all right. Maybe you'll get a flogging too. Ben, what's a flogging? Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe actually what I'll do is I'll give everybody else in class, which there's 11 other people, get one whack with the stick. Yeah? It'll be just like pledging a fraternity. All right. Okay, so there are 8 different ways to win. 3 rows, 3 columns, and 2 diagonals. Okay? And how am I going to check the other rows, the other columns, and the diagonals? Well, is it really substantively different than what we just did? It's different, but is it substantively different? No. Just going to do the same crap over and over. Except for the second row, who do I check? Entries 3, 4, 5 for the third row. 6, 7, 8 for the first column. 0, 3, 6 for the second column. For the third column, for the first that diagonal, 0, 4, 8, and for the other diagonal, 2, 4, 6. Okay? All of that stuff is exactly the same for all 8 of them, with the exception of which 3 values we need to pluck out of our array. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so basically I made the first row, and then I copy-pasted that crap 8 times. Well, 7 times. Change the numbers in the appropriate places. Okay, but otherwise it's basically the same thing. Okay, so this is checking all 8 different cases for whether or not somebody has won. And if somebody has won, it's going to set the winner to which player won. Okay, because if all 3 of these values are equal to a 1, what does that mean? Who won? Player number 1. Okay, so I set the variable winner to that same number, player 1 in this case, and then I can say player number blah won the game. Okay? All right, so I've checked all 8 cases, and if any of them are true, I need to do the same crap. So that's why all of these here, all of them go down to this next block. Because in any win situation, all of the things that happen when a win occurs are the same. Okay, so you see this is kind of a mess, which is why it's nice that I was able to make its own function for cleanliness. Okay, but yeah, there we go. Okay, good? Okay, so what should happen then when a win has been detected? I'm going to basically print to the screen that player number blah won. Player 1 or player 2. Okay, and let me break this pin right here for just a second. Okay, all right, so you see this print string thing? You see how it's got the little like construction warning tape at the bottom? You should almost never use one of these blocks in a final product. Okay, you use blocks like that for testing purposes, to print things to the screen, but they look like crap. You can dump these things to a text file so you can look back and help you debug. Okay, but if you want to display text to a player, you should use widgets, like we did with the Hour of Code stuff. Okay, I just put this thing in real quick so that I wouldn't have to mess with the widget. Okay, so what will happen is when somebody finishes the game, it will say player whatever number, either 1 or 2, wins. Okay? All right, so let me hit play and let's see that. Okay, so see how it says up there, player 1 wins in the top left? Yeah? Okay, and now what happened? It didn't reset because I broke that pin. And in fact, if I click again, what's going to happen? It keeps saying that, okay, because I never reset the game. Once player 1 wins, he still wins. Okay? Okay, so let me go back into here, and let me reconnect this pin. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to trigger an event that I made called reset game. I could have made this a function. I chose to make it an event, and I'll show you here in a second what the difference is between a function and an event. Okay? All right, good? All right, so the reset game event is part of the game mode, which I'm already in, so this is why I don't have to cast to it. So if I go back to my event graph, I have this red thing, reset game, custom event. Okay? Events think of them as being slightly lesser than a function. A function gets its entire window for code. An event doesn't. All the events collectively go on the event graph. Okay, so you'd want to use events for, say, maybe slightly shorter things, functions for things that were maybe a little bit more complicated. That's sort of a rough rule of thumb. Okay, so when the game needs to reset, what do I want to do? Well, the first thing is I wanted to tell the player that I'm resetting it, okay, by just saying print resetting game, okay? All right, now, if I want to reset the game, I have to get everything back to the way it started when I first ran the game. What was everything set as when I first ran the game? Okay, what was 0? Yeah, all the entries in the block value were 0. All of the is active booleans for each block were false. And the materials were all blue. And the player turn needs to be reset to its starting value, okay, and so on, right? So I need to get everything back the way it started. Okay, so first off, who won if I'm resetting the game? Nobody. Okay, so I'll reset the winner to 0, okay? And then what do I need to do to the block vals? Set them all back to 0. Okay, so what this is going to do, this is a for each loop. It's going to, you give it an array, and it's going to do something for each element of that array. Okay, now in this case, I have an array of 9 numbers. And I want to set each of them to have the value, what? 0. Okay, so the array element, the array index is going to be which entry am I on? And then the set says, okay, entry number 8, set entry number 8 to 0. It's going to set all 9 of them, 0 through 8, to 0. Okay? All right, now you notice how the for each loop has 2 white nodes coming off of it? One of them goes to the set array element, and the other one goes to the set player turn thing. What's the order of execution here? Uh-huh, keep going. Yeah. How many times does that set array element block get executed? 9 times. So it's going to come to this. It's going to go bam, 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 bam. 9 times. And then what? Now I'm finished. Go down here. Okay? Good? So that's why there's 2 different execution node lines coming off of it. One for what process gets repeated, and the other for what happens when the repetitions are all done. Okay? Okay, so this resets all of the entries in my array back to 0. Okay, but what else do I need to do? I need to set the player turn to, actually that should be true, because I started it that way. I actually don't need this block, so I'm going to delete that. Okay, now what do I need to do? Well, I set the value of my array, but have I actually changed the colors yet, or anything about that? No, I've just changed some numbers, okay? So I need to now do something for every single actual block that exists. So what I'm going to do is this function gets me all actors of a particular class. So it will say, all right, I'm going to go into the game world, and I'm going to find every instance of a puzzle block. I'm going to shove them all into an array. Okay? So how many things are going to be in this array? 9. Okay, what are the objects inside each array? The actual blocks, not numbers, blocks. Okay? And then I'm going to do a for each loop. What do I want to do? Change the color and also its active variable. Okay? All right, so I chose to do this for each block. I'm going to cast to that block and trigger the reset block function that's inside each block. Okay, I could have done everything here, but I deliberately did this just to show you guys how you could trigger something somewhere else. Okay, good? Yeah? All right. Now, so for each object in my collection of blocks, cast to that block and trigger its reset function. Okay, good? Yeah? You a little hungover this morning? No. You were just looking like you were a little. No. All right, so let's go to the individual blocks. All right, so what are the different events in my event graph? Well, this is the stuff that we started with, which is what happens when the block gets clicked. Okay, I made another event for the reset block. Oops. Okay, what should happen when I want to reset a block? What's the first thing I do? Yeah, set it back to inactive so it's now clickable again. Okay, and then I also need to set its material to back to blue. Okay, and then the final thing that I do after this is just for testing, to make sure it was working correctly, I have it say print block number blah reset, and so it would print block 1 reset, block 2 reset, or sorry, block 0, 1, 2, all the way up to 8. Okay, I didn't actually need that, but I just put it in just to make sure that things were working the way I wanted them to. Okay, is that good? And has that reset everything the way it should be? Yeah, should be. Okay, so let's test it. All right, so now, okay, player 2-1 resetting game. Player 2-1 again resetting game. Player 1-1 resetting game. Player 1-1 resetting game. Player 1-1 resetting game, and so on. Okay? So it works. Gucci? Yeah. Okay, so there are two things still yet to do that I'm going to leave for y'all's homework. Okay, what have we not taken into account so far? Ah, exactly. We have not taken into account stalemates. Okay? In fact, let's deliberately get a stalemate and see what happens. Oh, shit. Damn. Okay. That was stupid.
I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, this guy's really about to make player 1 win.
Let's just say I have not gotten a whole lot of sleep over the last week. So, my mother's a mess, as you can imagine. I mean, this was her mother, and her father passed away in June, or well, early July. Right, so within 8 months, she's lost both parents. And she was with both of them when they passed. So, yeah. And then the funeral was a production because, well, for both of them, they were basically icons in the town. She worked for 4 U.S. congressmen over her career, 2 of whom were at the service. So you can imagine she was a pretty big deal. All right, anyway. So we haven't taken into account a stalemate. How did we keep track, or how did we deal with stalemates when we did this in mate code? Do you guys happen to remember? There are actually a couple different ways to do it, and I think I did it differently with the first class and with you guys, just for giggles. But how could we keep track of stalemate status? Okay, talk amongst yourselves. Okay. You guys know Coffee Talk from Saturday Night Live? No? Look it up later. Okay, so what about this 9? Keep tr- Okay, so one thing we could do is we could just have a counter. Start the counter at 0, and each time you click on a block, add 1 to that counter. And if that counter ever hits the number 9, then that means that a stalemate, well, okay, first off, when should we check the counter? After we check win or before? After. Okay, because if all 9 blocks have been clicked and somebody won, it's not a stalemate. Okay, so the stalemate thing should go at the very bottom, not at the very top. Okay, so if that counter's value ever hits 9 and nobody has won, then we should say stalemate and still reset the game. Okay? All right, so that would be one way to handle it. It's probably the easiest way. So that variable, you want to create a counter variable for num turns or something, right? Where would you put that variable? It's got to go somewhere, so where? Probably in the game mode would be the logical spot. Okay, yeah, that's where I'd put it. Okay, so that's part 1 of your homework, is to add in the stalemate stuff. Okay. Part 2 of your homework is I put in janky print strings. Okay, what would have been much cooler? Yeah, to use some widgets. Okay, like we had widgets in the Hour of Code stuff. Okay, and now here's for the fun part of the widgets. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a button that you had to click before it reset? So when the game wins, a new widget pops up that says, player blah wins. And then there's a little thing that says, click here to reset or to replay or something like that, and you click that, and that's what triggers the reset. Wouldn't that be really cool? Yeah. Okay, so there's your homework. Okay? And I'll post all the details and the original here to Canvas or Blocks or something so you guys can get to it. Okay? So, make sense? And if you want to have some fun with this, put in like sound effects and music and stuff just to kind of play. And I want like sparkles and things. No, I'm kidding, right? Yeah, so have some fun with it when you make the widgets. Okay, but are we cool with how to work with widgets, right? We did several of them in the Hour of Code, right? One that was sort of the overlay as you played the game, okay? The other thing would be, so what would be a good way to maybe display whose turn it is? You could do that with a widget, okay? You could do it by modifying this score thing, which let me show you how that works, by the way. If I click on the puzzle grid, this score text is actually, so let me go to the viewport. This is actually a component inside the puzzle block grid. It's the only thing inside of it, okay, which displays the score. Okay, the score variable is inside that, but if I go to the event graph, okay, here's how it changes the score. It formats text, and you see how there's 2 words score? So what's the difference between score and curly braces? Huh? Well, kind of. The curly braces means it's going to pull from the variable called score. Okay? And which is the little pin down there at the bottom. Okay? And the first word score is just a bunch of letters. They don't mean anything to the computer. It's just letters. Okay. So this is how you can make, well, one way that you can make text that has modifying values within it for things like score or whatever. Now, so this is one way to do it. What would the other way to do it be within a widget? Okay. When did we do this with a widget where we had something that updated? Well, a couple things. Okay, so with the hour of code widgets, what did we do for the when you were just playing the game widget? What was opaque or transparent? Yeah, the icons for whether or not you had the jump boost, the key, or when you guys added the double jump power up, right? We put another widget item in there, okay? And the visuals of those three things change depending on whether or not you did or did not have the corresponding object, okay? What was the other one that got modified? Besides the key and the jump boosts, the coin counter, right? Okay, that was handled as a widget. This is handled as a text object within a thing. Okay, but you have both options, right? Which one do you think is going to look better? Well, that's up to you. Okay, it's a good thing to have both of them. In fact, when I would use the text object, a good example would be, let's say we were making a tower defense game, and we had different enemies walking around. Or actually, let's go back to MakeCode. When you guys, the very first project you guys did in MakeCode, right, the space shooter, what did you have underneath your spaceship? The little fuel bar, right? Would it have made sense to make that a widget? Well, maybe. But let's say that you had health bars for all of the different enemies. Should those be widgets? No, because they should be attached to the actual object. They're not part of the screen. So does it make sense why it's good that we have both things here? Right? In the case of whose player turn it is, you could do either one. I'd probably do a widget for consistency, but I'll leave that to your artistic discretion. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so you guys have your assignment. All right, since we got a few minutes left, let's talk about the other template projects that were in the games category. Okay, what did you guys poke around and look at? Yeah, okay, so there's a flyer one where there's a spaceship that is sort of constantly moving forward, kind of slowly, excuse me, and then you can fly it about, right? Conceivably, quite easily, you could change whether or not it was moving forward at all, or how fast it was moving, or whatever, right? Okay, so the spaceship thing, which would be kind of a 3D version, potentially, of the space shooter game that we did in MakeCode. Okay, what other things were there? Or you could use that for a 3D version of the space shooter. What else? Okay, there was the first-person shooter, which starts out by default with that gun that fires the little orange blobs. Okay, and I think at some point it talked about the physics and stuff of the mass of the blocks and whether or not the ball adjusts the physics or not. Okay, you could just delete the gun and delete the shooting ability and have sort of a just walk around kind of thing. What else? Okay, so the side scroller, there are actually two different versions of the side scroller. What are they? Yeah, it's a 2D or flat and a 3D one. Okay, so what's the difference? Yeah, how the graphics work. So the 3D one, they're still 3D objects, but you're just looking at them side on. Okay, and there is some depth to it. With the 2D ones, it's much more like MakeCode. So if I wanted to animate a character walking in 3D mode, it's an actual 3D model. But in 2D mode, what is it? It's a series of images, okay? And now, in 2D mode, okay, unlike MakeCode, your images can be very high res, high detail, high color, and so on. In MakeCode, they were all blocky pixel graphics, real crude looking, and that was sort of deliberate, okay? You could, of course, do block pixel graphics in Unreal if you wanted to, okay? So the trouble with the 2D mode is not so much it's hard how it works, but rather the fact that you've got to animate things frame by frame, which means you have to have the art to animate it frame by frame. Now, some of you guys are really wizards with Photoshop and other things like that because you've got artist brains. That's not all of us, okay? So, yeah, 3D mode, a lot of things are pre-animated for you. Okay, what else besides the side scrollers? Bueller. Okay, there were the vehicle ones. There was a simple and an advanced one. The advanced one had gear shifting in it, which is kind of cool. Okay, great. There was also third person, and there was one that was called like top down, which is more like a Diablo kind of view where you click and the player moves to wherever you click. Okay, if you deleted the player, you could make that into a tower defense kind of thing because you'd just be moving your camera around, or change it from click to mouse movement or something, I don't know, right? Okay, so what kind of games are you guys sort of thinking might be fun to, right, start thinking about, you know, our final projects. We're kind of getting to that point where the training wheels are coming fully off. I mean, we've already joked about the frat tower defense, which is, yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
Like a first-person shooter, but it's like kind of done how we did the hour code style. Like you're kind of running around, and then eventually enemies
Like keys and stuff and enemies and yeah, okay, you can do that. Okay, now this is actually one thing we haven't talked about yet, which is how to handle enemies, and particularly how to handle enemy AI, right? Because how did we do this with MakeCode? It was pretty crude, but also MakeCode had a lot of things built in for us. Okay, so that's a whole little ball of wax that, depending on what kind of game you want to do, may or may not be super relevant. Because you could do like a puzzle game. I mean, none of you get to do Tic Tac Toe. Sorry. Okay. And Connect 4 is no. Right? Let's do something more fun than that. Yeah, but like, let's see. Ethan did a Ghost Hunter game. So like you walk around to different rooms and then you've got different like instruments to take readings from the room, and then you want to find and eliminate the ghost out of a room. Okay, so there weren't really enemies per se, but you know, anyway. All right, so start to kind of think about that. What else did you guys find in the marketplace? Did you guys poke around and see what free stuff there was? There's almost too much free stuff. Okay, what?
I found like some like castle building stuff on there.
Yeah. Okay, let me close all this stuff, by the way. And go back into here. All right, marketplace. So if I go to marketplace and I go browse, let's go to free, all the free content. Okay, There is crap tons of stuff in here, way more than you need. Okay, but in particular, let's go to free Epic Games content. This will be stuff made by Epic themselves. Okay, for example, our hour of code was there. Okay, but what else is in here? Automotive winter scene. Oh, I forgot to mention that, actually. So last week, before I had to disappear, they had an automotive online event. So it's like a 2-hour webinar. And they showed how like BMW and Volkswagen and all these car companies are using Unreal Engine for stuff. Okay, now why do you think a car company might want to use Unreal Engine? What do you think they could use it for? Okay, designing cars. Now, for that, they actually use much more high-power 3D software. Okay, but where does Unreal come in then? Okay, virtual crash testing, sure. You'd have to write a bunch of plugins and stuff, but you could do it. One of them would be like a car configurator. Your customer comes in and they want to see what it's going to look like if they have this trim with the black paint with that color leather interior and so on. And if you can render all that on the fly in Unreal Engine or something else, right, then your customer can kind of see and even sit down and even have a VR headset and sit down and feel what's it going to be like to sit in this car. Might help you sell more cars, right? Okay, what else? They make commercials with this. Yeah? Because then you don't have to have a professional driver doing dangerous stuff where they might actually crash the car. What happens if you crash a virtual car? Nothing. Big deal, right? Okay, so you can do commercials. Now, this part of it actually blew me away when I saw this. Okay, now, none of you guys probably have a car fancy enough for this, but some cars now have like an in-vehicle like screen where you can like see the like tire pressures and stuff like that, and it's got a little like picture of the car. There are some car companies that is actually running Unreal Engine to display the image of the car in your car. Right, so for like HUD controls and stuff like that. Your your 044 Taurus. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, how many of you drive cars that are older than you are? Huh? Yeah, okay. Well, all right. How many of you drive cars that are fancy enough that they have Unreal Engine running in them? That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, there's some people, right? Okay, anyway. So in terms of other content, though, there are some templates in here. This is all, but there's also assets for like, there's some of this Edith Finch stuff that's got a whole bunch of different assets that you guys can look at. Also, did anybody play the Infinity Blade games on iOS? There's castles and temples and hideouts and other props and stuff that you can get. There's a crap ton of stuff from Megascans, Quixel, that used to be a separate company and then Epic bought it, so it's sort of integrated in. That's super high-res, high-detail materials for ground and buildings and asphalt and all kinds of crap. I mean, it's amazing how much stuff is there. Okay, so maybe poke around in the free content and just kind of see what's there, and maybe that'll get some of your creative juices flowing for what kind of art you might want to use for a project. All right, we'll have to look at the foliage tool later, and I think that's probably good for today. All right, see you guys. Have a good weekend.